man, is God in the middle of a father and a son not talking for 12 years? Is God really in the middle of that? I mean, some people may have a hard time believing that that's the case, but I think when it turns out the way it turned out, I believe he is.
We all have those moments where we need a little encouragement to get through our day. Someone to remind us that we are not alone. Find peace. Embrace joy. Seek God daily. Welcome to Jesus Calling Stories of Faith. Our guest is Heisman Trophy winner and NFL Hall of Fame wide receiver Tim Brown. Tim's motivation to succeed in life and in football was greatly driven by a desire to reconcile with his father after a misunderstanding between them that happened when Tim was only 12 years old drove them apart for years. Tim recalls his early days with his family and that life-changing moment with his father that would define his path for over a decade.
I'm Tim Brown, 1987 Heisman Trophy winner, 2015 NFL Hall of Famer. Played 17 years in NFL. Yeah, we grew up in South Dallas. It was four of us, four kids and parents living in a two-bedroom place, duplex. And the neighborhood was really bad. All these cuts and scars on my face all happened before I was 6, 7 years old. I mean, one is I found a bullet and I had a hammer, decided bullet should meet hammer, and it, I mean, just all kinds of things, happened. So that was my South Dallas days. And we moved to Southeast Dallas and to a 3-bedroom house, little house on the hill. It was pretty nice. And my brother moved out, but the two girls had the bedrooms and not Timmy. So Timmy still slept on the couch. Matter of fact, that's what this dent came from. I rolled out the couch and hit my head on the corner of the coffee table. And so if I only had a bed, if I only had a bed, life would have been so much better. Mom and Dad, had a great relationship. Never saw them fight nor argue. Obviously, they did, but never in front of us. Dad was a foreman on construction sites, was not a church guy per se, would go with us, Father's Day and Easter, My mom was a missionary in the church, so Wednesday, Friday, all day Sunday she was at church, and if she was there, we were there. Dad was working all the time, never saw him miss a day at work, he was a very steady guy, and, he partied as hard as he played, he worked, so he owned a nightclub also. Really, we would see him for about 2 hours every night. When he got home from work, he'd go lay down for a minute. Go shower, lay down for a minute. Then he was out to his club, and would be home, 12 o'clock to get up at 5 o'clock and do it all over again, That's how he did it. There weren't many of my friends who I knew who had both their parents, or maybe they were the parents were on to their second marriage, so there was always some stepmom, stepdads type situations. But I was very fortunate from that standpoint, and, but I think everything changed for me when I was 13. My dad was a little bit of a drinker, and, because I slept on the couch in the den most of the time, sometimes I would sleep on their floor, wherever, he came home a little intoxicated one night, and it was late at night. I should have been asleep. It was school night, but I was watching a movie. It was a good movie too. I think it was a Tarzan movie or something, but it was good. And he turned the TV off, and I just sort of said, "Hey, Pop, I'm watching that." But in his mind, the fact that I was coming at him, he thought I was coming after him. And, it was all because of the alcohol, because me and my dad had a great relationship up until then. And, are you coming after me? Oh, I'm gonna kill you. Oh, yeah, you gonna come after me? And, hearing those words come out of your dad's mouth and for him to mean it, was tough. It was tough to hear. And I was like, oh, Pop, hey, man, no, I was just, talking about TV. No, you gonna come out to me? No. And I realized he was a little over the limit. And so now I was like, okay, let me go get Mama, because he's going out to his trunk, and I know he had guns in his trunk because every night he would come home with big buckets of change from the machines in the nightclub, but on either side of that bucket were guns on both sides. So when he went outside to the trunk, I was like, wait a minute, this is getting real serious now. So Mom is out there. She goes out and she's Gene, you gotta settle down. You gotta no. And I can remember, we had this little plastic tree in the corner of the room, and I can remember going and hiding behind that tree as if that tree was going to stop a bullet, but in my mind I had to do something, and that really changed the dynamics of my relationship with my dad for years, and really the dynamic of the family for a while too, because anytime we came in a room together, everybody was like, tight, like what was going to happen, because my dad was not a man who could say, hey, had a tough night last night, may have had too many, we boys, let's move on. So it was tough. It was tough, but I remember from that time, for the next 12 years, everything I did was to get the affection of my dad back. Everything I did. I mean, from football plays, because I never saw my dad at any of my games in high school. Now, I learned years later that he would be there. He just wouldn't be sitting in the stands. He would be at some gate or something where, And I'm telling you, that thing went all through graduating high school, getting a scholarship to the University of Notre Dame, graduating the University of Notre Dame, winning the Heisman, being drafted in the league, making All-Pro my rookie year. I got hurt, I got hurt my second year. I was like, well, maybe this will do it. Maybe this will bring this brother to me, That didn't do it. And I remember buying him a brand new truck in '91, thinking that would do it. And I think it was '92 where I said that this has to stop. I just can't. I mean, it's been 12, 13 years at this point. I can't, when I came in the house, he'd go out the back door. I go out, I come in the front door, he'd go out the back door. Because of my status at that particular point, he really couldn't say anything to me. I was paying for the house, his car, whatever. I was taking care of everything. And not that my dad ever felt like he was, demasculized or whatever, but at the same time, you could tell that it bothered him, So we were never in a room together. I mean, when I say never, that's not an exaggeration. It was just uncomfortable for everybody if we were in a room together because people just didn't know what was going to happen, And even though, my whole thing was, and one of my coaches told me this early into this process, he said, whatever you do, don't disrespect your dad. Always respect him. Because he'll realize one day, but always respect him. And that's what I did. Always gave him the utmost respect, never cross word, never talk back, anything of that nature. I come home and I had made up my mind on the plane that this was going to be it, And I knew the routine. If I came in the back door, he went out the front door, So I did one of my patented moves, He thought I was going to the front door, and I just walked around the house, and by the time I got there, he had made his way. He was coming out the door. I was standing right there, and I said to him, "This has to end today." And I said, and this was the thing that had been wearing on my soul for a couple years prior, was that I was being told in my spirit that I should apologize to my father, that I should ask him for forgiveness. And I'm like, hold up, you know, I bought this car. I bought this house. You know what I mean? I did this. I'm the one to, and he was the one who threatened me. But Spirit said, look, if you wouldn't have gotten out that bed that night, do you think this would have happened? Do you think your dad would have rolled you over and said, oh, I'm gonna kill you? Do you think this would have happened if you didn't make that move? I couldn't answer that question because I don't think it would have happened. And so that's what I told him. I said, I need for you to forgive me. And I will forgive you, but I need for you to forgive me, and I need for you to be my father. I need for you to be the man that I've known you to be my whole life. And we hugged it out, shook hands, all that stuff. And for the next 20 years of his life, we were perfect. We had an incredible relationship. But and what, another thing that kept being dropped in my spirit was, your dad is doing the best he can do, not the best he should be doing. This is all he knows, I mean, when he was 14, his dad said, he was the oldest of 10 kids. His dad said, I'm checking out. You got to raise these kids, your sisters and brothers. You know what I mean? You can smoke, drink, whatever you want to do. He started smoking and drinking when he was 14 years old, So, so was he properly prepared to be a parent? I mean, yeah, I was 5, so yeah, but when things come up, you only have one way of dealing with it. That's my way. I'm not going to deal with it in any other way. And I kept hearing those things in my spirit, but I couldn't. I had too much pride. I had too much going on within myself to understand what was happening. And thankfully, I got the strength to go to him and make things right. I really believe that changed my life because, that 12 years, because of my mindset, was to do everything as perfect as I could, to do something great enough to get this man's attention. Would I've had that same motivation if, I mean, it's amazing how things happen. I just wish, you say, I wish I would have done it years earlier, because I was definitely it was definitely inside of me to do that. But I had to deal with some things with myself too, and maturing to the point where you realize, what's really happening here, and the effect that it can have on people years and years to come. God allows things to happen, if at the end of that thing, you're still on this earth, then the lesson is for you. I think for me, it was 2008. My dad had just gotten sick. And I was in LA when they took him to the hospital. I was out there to film an episode of TBN. And so they were all watching me live, from the hospital. And I made the comment that I'd never had a drink of alcohol in my life, but I didn't tell the background story of that. And it didn't come off right. It came off as if I was being uppity, or if I was being like, I'm above certain things, And so I go over to my dad's house, and his oxygen mask on, And he said, I need to talk to you, So we go back in the room, in his room, in his little man cave, before there was a man cave, before that was an official term, I guess. And he said to me, you need to tell the story. Now I can tell you that story hadn't been told in 30 years at that point. Had never been brought up in the family. I certainly have never told it publicly, but he said, you need to tell the story. He said, I saw you on TV tonight. He said, people won't get it. Because he knew that I had never drank alcohol because of that night. Because I said to myself, if alcohol would make you want to kill your son, I'm never going to touch alcohol. So, and that was, to me, that was amazing. I mean, that was amazing that my dad picked up on that, and it showed me that he never forgot that situation either. But for him to say to me, you need to tell the story, it automatically clicked in my head what he meant and what I need to do. And almost immediately I started telling the story, and people were like blown away. I would have grown men coming up to me crying, and all these folks just like, I had the same situation, a little different here, but it's like I went through the same, and it was just amazing. And so, I think, the problem is we feel so guarded about things, and we think only I could happen to this can only happen to me. I mean, my wife went through all kinds of hell when she was a kid, and she never wanted to talk about it. I mean, it took her 10 years into our marriage before she can talk about it, and now she's blowing people away, because the woman she is now and where she came from. But we just have to be strong enough to understand that, if God allows something to happen, then he means for something good to come out of it. And if we have the opportunity, if whatever happens take you out, then the lesson is not for you. The lesson is for the people left behind. But if you're still here, man, you gotta dig down deep, and that's hard. So, it was tough. And that was part of my real battle, because I had gotten to the point where I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. Literally, I should tell people, my little running joke is, I'm glad I didn't have a big afro I had to shape up every day, because it would have been lopsided. Because literally, I washed my face, I could not look at myself in the mirror, because I knew that God was calling me to be different than who I was. And when you're 23 and 24 and 25 and 26, and you go, and at the same time, you're having a pretty decent NFL career. So nobody can figure out, why are you unhappy? Why are you walking around here moping? But they didn't know the struggle that I had going on inside of me, because I knew God had a bigger calling for my life. And I can remember, and I don't want you guys to think I'm crazy, but I used to talk to God. I mean, I never heard an audible voice, so I don't want you to think that I heard an audible voice. But I can remember God just telling me, Tim Brown, I need you to do my will. And I would answer him by telling him all the things that I was doing. What I had done, what I had accomplished, Why can't I just stay on this path? And and I would hear, oh, is that the problem? So you think it was you who got you a scholarship to the University of Notre Dame on a team that was 4-25-1. You think that was you. Is that the problem we have in Tim Brown? Well, you think it was you who allowed you to win the Heisman Trophy, become the first receiver, to break all these records, to hurt your knee and to come back and to be playing. You think that is that the problem that we're having? That you believe this is all you? And then you get to go, wow, God was there all the time. And I said, Lord, save me and save me good. I need everything that you have. I need it to be able to do what I have to do. I mean, I'm in the middle of an incredible career right now. And, I got a locker room I got to go back to that is full of mess, that a lot of it I brought into the locker room. Let's be honest about it. And now I got to go and tell these boys, I'm not participating in that anymore. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. It's not an easy thing to do. Not just a locker room, in your job, wherever. It is, all of a sudden, when you all of a sudden say, hey, that's not me anymore, now you are being different. You can say you're not if you want, but you are being different. And it took a while before, I was being mocked, I was all those kind of things, But I think after a couple of years, the guys realized that I really meant what I'd said. And they really started to support me, and that became a big boost in my spiritual walk, because I knew at that point that if you do this thing right, then people will follow you, and they want to hear what you say. Even the same people who are mocking you all of a sudden are pulling you over going, hey man, I've never seen anybody do this like you're doing it, what's going on, and it gives you a chance to witness to them, man, God took me from doing X, Y, and Z to this, to where I am now.
We'll be back with more of our interview with Tim Brown after this brief message about a beautiful new edition of Jesus Calling. Are you looking to introduce a friend or loved one to the peace that can be found by spending time with God daily? There's a beautiful new edition of Jesus Calling that makes a gorgeous gift for someone who might be seeking a new perspective for a new year. It's the same Jesus Calling daily devotional that has inspired over 25 million readers, now updated with a lovely fabric cover and eye-catching foil with feminine floral touches. This elegant new version also features large text and written out scripture verses with each passage. For more information about this stunning new edition of Jesus Calling, visit jesuscalling.com/botanical. That's jesuscalling.com/botanical. Now, let's get back to the second half of our program with Tim Brown. As Tim began to see the fruits of answering God's call in his life, he also began to see his career wrap up in a way that he never expected, setting a record for the longest career as an NFL player, 17 years. Following this incredible feat, Tim then had to think about what life was going to look like for him, separate from his long and successful career playing ball.
People are starting to say, hey man, your numbers are looking like they can be Hall of Fame numbers, and you really is, Hall of Fame is not something you can even think about, I mean, it's so big, for an NFL player that it's not something you can even think about. So, but I remember, being full of pride, even after I'm saved and all this good stuff, that I was in prayer one night and as clear as day, I heard, I don't have you here just so you can be in the Hall of Fame. I have you here so you can touch men. I'm telling you, I got off my knees boxing with God that night. I mean, if my wife would have walked in the room, she would have thought I'd lost my mind for sure that night. Because I was saying, look, I got a thumb that does this. I got a shoulder that pops out of place when it wants to. I got an 11-inch scar on my knee right here. I need to be in the Hall of Fame. I ain't thinking about no man. I need to be in the Hall of Fame. And God reminded me again, here we go again, Tim. Here we go again. Do I need to remind you again of who has really been in charge? And it's at that point where I realized God had been setting me up my whole life. In 1989, my second year in the league, I tore my knee up. And the doctor told me, Tim, maybe 5 years, more like 4 years you got with this knee. Because of what we had to do, we just don't see it lasting more than 4 or 5 years. So you need to prepare yourself to leave the game. And that's basically why I, had set the age, if I could make the 30, man, that would be, And, so I was really blessed. After my knee surgery, I played 15 years. I missed one game. I could have played in the game. The Raiders kept me out. But, to have that kind of longevity after a major injury was pretty unusual. I think the average is still 4.9 or 3.9, something of that nature. First round picks usually last, 6 years, 6 to 8 years, but 17, you're not going to ever see anybody play 17 years after Drew Brees and all these guys retired. It won't happen anymore. My plan was to play till I was 30. And at 30, I had my best year in the league, stat-wise. So I was like, well, let's give this a couple more years and see what happens. And then when I turned 32, I was thinking about retiring again. And they brought in a coach, John Gruden, who is back with the Raiders now. And he told me, we can do some special things together. And I was like, because of the situation with the organization, I just, So he said, give me 1 year. If you don't like it, then we can part ways. And I had a great year that year. And so by the time he left, I was 35. And so I had a chance to, put my name in the history books. So, so we stayed around a couple more years to make sure that got done. Once you get to the point, you get over 30, you get 32, you get 35, you realize, wow, this is really a miracle what has happened. There's a strange thing though, because I think guys who play longer in the league have a more difficult time when they leave. Why? Because that's all they've done. So since the time I was 12, the main thing I was known for was playing football. And now, 38, about to turn 39 is the time when I retired. So it was a difficult process from the standpoint of, knowing that you could do more than play football, but, that routine that you were so accustomed to. I can remember the first year out, I was with Fox Sports Net doing commentary for them on a Thursday night show that we taped on Thursday night. Just happened to be the first year that the NFL started the Thursday night football games. And just so happened that the Raiders were playing. So, now I didn't even play for the Raiders in my last year. I played 16 with the Raiders. My last year was with Tampa Bay. But the Raiders came out the locker room, and they were playing the Patriots. They came out the locker room, and something came over me that just wasn't right. I could not figure out why I wasn't there. And I was sitting on the set. They got lights. We're ready to go, and I just break out into a cold sweat. And I'm just telling myself, but I can't say anything. And they're talking to me going, Tim. Finally, I was able to get up and walk around the stage and just tell myself, it's okay. Chose to leave this game. This is what you're doing in your next life. It's going to be all right. And but it was a moment. It was a moment that I didn't think I would have, because I had been preparing myself to leave the game, And I was one of the ones who got a chance to say, hey, I'm going to retire this day. Bring the media out. I'm going to stand up to the microphone and say, hey, it's been a great career, But what about all the guys who get cut, get hurt, get injured, whatever, and that's how they leave the game? That has to be very difficult. There are just so many things we have to deal with in this world that can be overwhelming. Literally, they can be overwhelming. But there's just so much comfort and peace in knowing that, man, I know he's got me. October 29th, linger in my presence a while. Rein in your impulses to plunge into the day's activities. Beginning your day alone with me is essential for preparation for success. A great athlete takes time to prepare himself mentally for the feat ahead of him before he moves a muscle. Similarly, your time of being still in my presence equips you for the day ahead of you. Only I know what will happen for you this day. I have arranged the events you will encounter as you go along your way. If you are not adequately equipped for the journey, you will grow weary and lose heart. Relax with me while I ready you for action. Ephesians 2:10, Hebrews 12:3. That's something that hits home with me. One of the things that I used to do is to literally steady myself on the floor and just lay down and think about everything that I was about to do. And I would think about, the guys who I was playing against, and what the techniques that they use, and how I was going to defeat those guys, doing different things. So it is something that man, I never really thought about. How awesome would it be to do that and think about God's word while you do that? Yikes. That would be really deep. I don't know if I can get up. I'd be crying too much. I wouldn't be able to get up. Oh, but that's an awesome little passage right there. So, I'm still trying to learn, not to doubt God, not to doubt him in any way, any shape, any form. Allow him to be him in your life, and believe me, that things will work out for the best.
Next time on Jesus Calling Stories of Faith, we speak with Super Bowl champion quarterback Jeff Hostetler, who led the New York Giants to win in Super Bowl 25 some 1.5 months after starting quarterback Phil Simms was lost for the season with a broken foot. Through all the challenges of his career, Jeff shares how he wouldn't change any of it, as he recognizes God's hand using each situation to strengthen him and help other people.
I'm just so blessed. The Lord's been so good, and he's taken me to places I've never dreamed that I would be. He's provided me with things that I never dreamed that I would ever have. A wife that is my best friend, a family that I grew up with, a background that I would never trade for anything. And it's not been easy, you know. There's been all these ups and downs and life-threatening situations and difficult times, and yet I can honestly say I would never trade any of them because I can see how God has used those and how He has blessed me or others through those things.
Thank you for watching Jesus Calling Stories of Faith. Be sure to join us every first and third Sunday of each month for a new Jesus Calling Story of Faith, debuting live on the Jesus Calling Facebook page. You can also find inspirational stories from a different guest weekly on the Jesus Calling audio podcast, which appears on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and other popular podcast providers. If you'd like to learn more about how to listen and subscribe to our podcast, visit our YouTube channel at youtube.com/JesusCallingBook and look for our instructional video on how to subscribe and listen to our podcast weekly.